Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about addiction, ladies and gentlemen. And I have Gary back on my show who's going to really help us think about this in a whole new way. Thank you so much, Gary, for coming back on my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Last time we talked about less stress, and it was such a great conversation. And now we are thinking about addiction. So, what does addiction make you think about?
All right, well, so here's the key, right? So, as a doctor, I'm used to handling diseases. And so the medical field decided to push addiction instead of being in the morally bankrupt field, they put it into the medical field and made it a disease. So they squished and squashed and took all the symptoms and said, okay, these are symptoms, and we're going to make it a disease, which then made it to fit our narrative, which says, okay, if you have a disease, then it's going to have symptoms and it's going to have a course, and here's going to have side effects, and these are and then we can treat it, and right, okay, which helps because instead of saying to somebody, hey, you really suck and you're a low life addict, we say, oh, you have a disease. But here's
Mhm,
the problem. So
mhm.
when I started looking at it, I'm like, wait a second, we have really smart people in the medical field. And we have a lot of money that's being given to people with addictions and to try and treat it. And the people who want to get sober are really motivated because their lives are sucking right now. And despite all that, we're only getting a 20% success. And you're like, wait a second, something's wrong with this picture, right? There's something wrong
Yeah.
here. Not sure what it is yet, right? So there's a book that I had read called The Theory of Scientific Revolution. And what it said is that when you end up in these places where something's not working, sometimes you have to go back to the beginning where your premise is. So I went back to like, is it really a disease? And I was like, I don't think so, right? Because I was at a conference and I said, if we're going to call addiction a disease, then we have to call marriage a disease. And the lady looked at me like, what? And I was like, think about it. So when you get married, you are high. You're like so high that you're saying to somebody that I'm going to be with you forever, no matter what. Like you have to be high to say that. I don't care who you're talking to, right? So you're really high, but then over the next couple of years, very specific things start happening. There's some disagreements and there's some disharmony, and then there's miscommunication. And then if you don't fix it, it keeps going until it gets so bad that the marriage dies. And then you relapse and you get married again. What? Like you already know this, right? And like and some and the lady I was talking to is like, wow, well, there's no genetic component to marriage. And I'm like, well, my mom and dad both got married, all my brothers and sister got married. That sounds pretty genetic to me, right? So then my wife elbowed me in the side and said, shut up, we have to eat dinner, right? But you get my point, right? So
Yeah.
we can squish things into the disease model if we want to, but it isn't helping. And here's why. And I'm going to give you an example. So I went in this, I was a medical director of one of the nursing homes, and this patient came in. He was 70 years old, had pneumonia, was at the hospital, gotten sick, came to the nursing home, and his regular physician came and saw him and said, Joe, you're an alcoholic. And Joe looked at him like, what? He goes, I'm a 70-year-old psychologist. I work every day. I'm married. What are you talking about? I'm an alcoholic. And he goes, well, it says on your form from the hospital that you drink 4 drinks a day. So that makes you an alcoholic. And he's like, what are you talking about? So now they're having an argument. And the
Yeah.
reason they're having an argument is because the doctor doesn't have any objective tests that say you're an alcoholic. And the patient's like, I don't want that diagnosis. Why would I want that? Like that's not good for me. I don't put that on my resume as a thing that says, hey, hire me because I'm an alcoholic, right? So
Yeah.
now they're arguing. And so then they fight. And so basically the patient fired the doctor and said, no, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And what I've seen when people with this disease model is they wait till things are so bad that they finally say, all right, fine, I'll take that horrible diagnosis that's going to be there forever. And no matter what I do, the best I'm going to do is control it. So then he hired me to be his doctor. And I came in and said, Joe, I see you drink 4 drinks a night. And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, why do you drink 4 drinks a night? He goes, well, I'm as a psychologist, I'm busy and I'm exhausted and I'm kind of stressed out. And so I have a couple drinks and then I feel better. And I go, okay, well, do you need to drink four? And he looked at me, he goes, well, yeah, no, maybe not. Maybe I can get away with three, or how about two? Maybe one, right? And so then we started having negotiations. So then he could talk to me because I wasn't beating him over the head with this lifelong diagnosis that's bad, right? So then I use my model called the stress reducer loop model, and it comes directly from what we were talking about the first time about stress. So what I found is when people are under stress, when they haven't read my book yet, right? Highway to Your Happy Place, what they do is they find something to reduce their stress. So it could be literally for humans, thousands of things. Like it could be exercise, it could be reading a book, it could be listening to Mitzi's podcast, it could be walking, it could be going to church, it could be watching TV, it could be doing karaoke. Not for everybody, for me, right? um, oh, but here's the key. Okay. So we've picked all these stress reducers, but here's the key. So when the stress reducer starts causing stress, now you end up, and here's the term stress reducer loop. Okay. So let
Yeah.
me give you an example. So some guy goes to work and it's a bad day. And on his way home, he stops off at the bar and has a couple beers. And it
Hmm.
makes him feel better because alcohol is a stress reducer, right? But as he's driving home, he gets pulled over by the police and he gets a DUI. So now the stress reducer, drinking alcohol, just caused stress. So then he gets home and he's telling his wife, honey, oh my gosh. He goes, I had a bad day. I had a couple beers. And then on the way home, I had a DUI. I'm gonna go get a couple beers. And his wife's like, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean you're getting a couple beers? You just got in trouble for drinking. But you see what I'm saying? The stress reducer starts causing stress, which then leads to stress, which uses more stress reducer, which leads more. And now you're in this loop. And if it goes
Yeah.
on long enough, then the person goes to jail or dies because they run out of energy because it literally takes away all their energy.
Yeah.
Which
That's very
then,
valid.
when you use stress reducer loop, it literally changes your whole perspective on addiction. Because now, instead of saying it's a lifelong disease, so think about this. This is what we don't always use these words, but these are the implications of what we say to people. We go, you have a disease that you're going to have forever. And the best you're going to ever do is control it, maybe, right? That you have brain damage, you're genetically defective, you're weak willed, you're stupid, you're dirty, you're personality disordered. Like, what? Who the heck wants that? No, I don't want any of that
Yeah.
crap, right?
Yeah.
So in my model, I go, hey, this is normal. And my
Yeah.
patients go, what do you mean normal? I go, think about it. You have stress. Everybody has stress, right? You found
Yeah.
something that worked. Yay, we all do, right? It worked so well that you made it into a habit. It became automatic, which implies there's a brain connection that goes, hey, stress, go do that. It's in there, right? It's anatomical. Then you
Yeah.
go, oh, wait, this thing's causing problems. I got to do something about it. And you go to try to stop, but now you get stuck with two things. One, you got this anatomical track, and
Yeah.
two, there's a lot of stress involved with trying to. You're already under a lot of stress, so it sets the button off. So there's a tendency to go back down that track. That's
Absolutely.
normal. And then when
Hmm.
you do stop, you're like, yay. So then what you've done now is changed what you do when you're under stress, and you made a new track. Yay. So all that's normal. And people look at me like, no, come on, Dr. Sprouse. You're telling me I could be normal? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And you see what? They get a big smile on their face because they
Yeah.
like that idea.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the fact that you said it's a stress reducer loop that we are falling into. And you're absolutely right. You can put this with alcohol, you can put this with shopping, you can do this with smoking, you can do this with so many different aspects that we don't even realize that we are falling into this loop and it's on this conveyor belt that we are just on, just in and in and in. And we don't even realize that this is what we're doing until we realize, like, oh, years later, and it's like, oh, well, where did all my money go? Oh, it went to gambling. Oh, it went to shopping because every time you were stressed out, you went to the casino or you went to the mall. You know what I mean? You went it
Right.
online, and that Amazon cart is full, full, full. You know what I mean? So it's just like people don't realize what they're doing to relieve their stress. I mean, even for children, oh, they're mad at their parents. So I'm gonna go online. I'm gonna look, 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 scroll, 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 scroll. And then every time they feel upset, they're gonna scroll, 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 scroll. I mean, even for babies, you get them accustomed to having their bottle and they don't have their bottle. What are they gonna do? They're gonna cry, cry,
Yes.
cry until they get their bottle. And then they realize that's what calms them down.
Right. Have
That's
you
where
already
they
read this
relieve.
stuff? Like you're saying exactly what you're like using the words that I'm using. What?
Yeah,
Good for
yeah, no,
you.
I get it. It makes perfect sense. I mean, you can put it in infants, you can put it in grown adults, you can put it in
Yes.
everything in between, and it just makes us realize like addiction is not necessarily a disease. It's just the way that we are managing, the way that we deal with stress, we deal with sadness, we deal with things that are unpredictable, we deal with things that we don't even know how to even handle. So, oh, it's customary to go drink, it's customary to go smoke, it's customary to go scream, it's customary to go shopping. You know what I mean? And then we think, oh, it's harmless. But one time it's harmless, but when you continue on doing it and you see it as your scapegoat, then that is when it becomes a serious problem. You know what I mean? Because then you realize like, oh, I have no money. Oh, I have no friends. Oh, my skin is bad. You know what I mean? Like it really does take a toll on you. So I guess to really ask you, how do we get off of this loop,
Well,
this
so
conveyor belt, this, how do we do this?
So one of the things that comes out of this is that anything that people do to reduce their stress can turn into a loop. So you already mentioned shopping. I had a patient that was had a heroin addiction, and we had her on Suboxone, and she had been sober for a couple of years at this point. But when we were talking about stress reduced loop, she said exactly what you just said about shopping. Her sister would, she goes, "Oh my gosh, my sister's in the shopping loop." When she gets upset, she goes shopping. Her credit card's maxed out, her closet's full, and her husband's yelling at her, which makes her go back and go shopping, right? One of my employees was in a bleach loop. And you're like, wait, what's a bleach loop, right?
Yeah.
So when she got stressed out, she would bleach the crap out of her house, and that made her feel better, right? Like everything was clean. And you're
Mhm.
like, okay. But turned out that one of her kids had asthma. So when she bleached the house, that set off her kid's asthma, which is a mess. And her cabinets were starting to fall apart because there was so much bleach on them. I'm like, you're in a bleach loop, right? So literally anything that humans do to reduce their stress can turn into a loop. And any person can end up in a loop depending on their circumstances. So what we
Yeah.
saw in the Vietnam War was like the statistics were 80 or 90% of people that are in Vietnam in the war were addicted to something,
Yeah.
right? They were in a stress reducer loop. So when the
Yeah.
war ended, the military was very concerned. They were like, what are we going to do with all these people coming back with their, not, in my words, stress reducer loops, right? Well, guess what? When they came back, 80% of them just stopped because they didn't have the stress anymore. So they didn't need that stress reducer anymore. So there's 20% that they had to deal with, but 80% just got home and stopped because the stress was so low that they didn't need that anymore. So
Yeah.
when you say, what do we do about it? The first thing is we got to recognize the loop model. And here's what I find that people get it quickly, particularly people who are in a like, well-defined loop, like alcohol or heroin. Therapists, they struggle. And here's why. Because they're like, wait, I've been trained a certain way and I've been
Yeah.
doing this for 20 years. And you're telling me I'm not right? And like, well, kind of. Right. But here's the second thing is because what it does is it puts everybody on the same level. So if you're there, so like I was at a methadone clinic doing some research and I was talking to this lady who was 100 pounds overweight. And she's telling me how the heroin addict needed to get their life under control and they tried to do it by themselves, but they really needed a group and they needed help and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, you realize you're 100 pounds overweight. You're in your own stress reducer loop. And until you recognize that you're in a loop too, just because it's a different loop than the heroin loop doesn't make you any better or worse. So now all of a sudden you're at the same level. So you go to the heroin, you need to get your life under control. And the heroin addict looks at you and says, you need to get your life under control. You're like, wait, what? Yeah. So therapists have more struggle with this because it's harder for them to hear it because they're so used to being in an unequal relationship where they're sort of like telling everybody what to do. And in addiction, here's the threat. If you don't do what I say, you're going to go to jail or you're going to lose your job or
Yeah.
you're going to whatever. And so we have these incredible threats that we throw out at people because if they don't, we're blah, blah, blah. But the threat only goes one way. And so in stress reduce the loop model, it can go both ways. And that's a little unnerving.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you brought that up because people don't realize like just because it's illegal and they're doing heroin or they're doing meth or they're doing cocaine or weed and it's like, oh, a big taboo because it's a hard drug, doesn't make him any better than you over there having a sex addiction and fucking everything that's walking past you. You know what I mean? Or
Mm,
just or you have a gambling addiction or you have this shopping addiction. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you better when you're addicted to food. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you better if you're addicted to just look scrolling through online. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you any better because you're still in the same loop and it causes this issue. And it's like you said, it's like our last episode, it's about that less stress. And I think once we realize and identify that stress, then we will be able to lower it. Like you said, the Vietnam War people, what did they do? They came back, had less stress, they didn't have the same encounters, so they didn't have to have the same experiences. But now they have new experiences, now they have new stressors, and now they have to learn how to manage with those new stresses. And feel like a lot of the times people don't recognize that if they don't handle this situation well, then it will cause a bigger issue. But it's like you said, it's that threat aspect, you know. But it's like people don't realize like everyone can still lose something. You know what I mean? You can lose your family, you lose your friends, you can lose your job, you can lose all of these credentials just by any addiction. Because if you're not reliable with money and you're supposed to be a financial advisor,
mm.
that's a problem. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like if you're
absolutely. Yep.
supposed to be a physical trainer and you are over there binge eating and bulimic and you know what I mean? Doing
Mhm.
and that's your addiction, and that's a problem. And I think a lot of the times people don't want to confront their own demons because they're so easy to point out somebody else's. And it's like, no, we have to come back to reality that we all have something that we don't know how to manage our stressors with. And the problem with addiction is and the problem with the fact that you get labeled or diagnosed as addiction is that it is on your record forever. And
Mhm.
people who read your file, they automatically put you in this category of untrustworthy,
Mhm.
unreliable, um, dramatic, possible pathological liar. They'll do anything. And because I've seen it, I've worked in the health
Mhm.
industry, I've worked with insurance claims, I've seen it. You know what I mean? As soon as that diagnosis is right there on their sheet, everybody changes their perspective about how they're going to manage their drugs, their prescriptions, whatever that they have for that person. And if people don't realize it's a real big thing. So like, do you think getting addiction off of this disease um label, is that ever going to be a thing, or is this always going to be what it is?
Well, if you and I work together, yeah, like you're already telling
Right?
my story, right? But yes, I think so because, and here's why. So in my office, now I'm a primary care doctor. I was seeing patients once a month. Okay, so I had 100 patients that had heroin addiction problems, heroin stress reducer loop problems, right? I was getting a 95% success rate, seeing these patients once a month for 150 bucks versus people that went to rehab that were spending 20 to $60,000 a month and they were getting a 20% success rate. Okay, which model would you rather use? Right? So here's what I found. A couple things. One, most of our treatment protocols are crazy stressful. Like, think, I don't know if you've ever seen or known somebody who's been in rehab, but the first thing they do when they go in is they get locked up in a building that they're not allowed out of.
Yeah.
Second, they get their phone taken away, so they can't have any connection to the real world. Third, they have to put on hold their whole life, so they can't see their friends, their family, they can't go to work. They're stuck. And you're like, what? Can you think of more stressful things to do? And then say, oh, and by the way, don't have any relationships while you're here. Don't call anybody. If you get attracted to somebody, don't do it because we're going to kick you out. What? Like it's crazy stuff, right? Like at
Yes.
methadone clinic, you have to be there at 5:30 in the morning, stand in line with 300 other people, wait for your dose, go spend 15 minutes talking to the psychologist, and then try to get to work. And if you're 15 minutes, if you're 1 minute late, you don't get your dose. And you're like, wait, what? So, and you have to be 100% or you get kicked out. And you're like, this is insane. If I went to college and someone said, you got to get straight A's or you get kicked out, I wouldn't even go because you know that's impossible, right? So we're
Yeah.
putting these impossible situations for people and then punishing them when they don't succeed. And you're like, well, you made it ridiculously hard to succeed. So
Yeah.
when you asked me earlier, like, what do you do? So the things that I did were one, I made people have the goal of being normal, not an ex addict. They were normal. So what I say to people, this idea that you go, hey, I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic. What? When's the last time you drank? Well, it was 25 years ago. Well, that's insane. Why would you describe yourself as something that you haven't done in 25 years? Like that would be like me saying, hey, I'm Dr. Sprouse, I'm a bedwetter. And they're like, what? You mean you're a bedwetter? And I go, well, when I was two, I used to wet the bed, but then I stopped. And I haven't
Yeah.
done it in a while, but who knows? One night of bedwetting, I might be back to it, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. So why would you do that? Why literally you have thousands of tracks in your head. Why would you describe yourself as one of the worst tracks that you have? No, stop doing. If you're not drinking, then you're not out. You're not an alcohol stress reducer lube. Like you're normal. Yay, right? So the second is that because the goal is to be normal instead of just being not a whatever, um, that people go, what? That's nice. Two is the whole goal of this then is to let's have less stress. So just like the Vietnam vet, if you take people's stress away, then they don't need anything. So if you take like I always had patients with diabetes that were 100 pounds overweight. When they lost 100, the few patients that lost 100 pounds, guess what? They didn't need any medicine. Their diabetes went away. So your stress reducer loop will go away if you have less stress, right? Which is where the book comes in.
Yeah.
The second half of that is, well, okay, let's find ways to have less stress. And then let's find other ways to deal with the stress besides that. And if we can find something that works as well as, or even close to as, then you're not going to be in that loop anymore. So what I tell people is I don't want you to switch from one thing to another thing, because this is what we see with smokers. So smokers will switch from cigarettes to food and they gain 20 pounds automatically, right? So what
Yeah.
I say to people is I don't want you to switch to one. I want you to switch to five. I want you to have five different things that you can pick from in any given circumstance, because you can't exercise if you're in the middle of a meeting, right? And you can't like doodle while you're trying to talk to them, right? So you have to have different things that you can pick from depending on the setting that you're in. And then the third step to that is then you have to practice and do it over and over and over again until, and this is what our brain is amazing at, is it makes it automatic. So then you don't have to think anymore. So for me, like I was doing a smoking in group, and the group, I said, okay, I'm going to stop something. And they're like, what are you going to stop? Like, because I go, well, I don't smoke, so I can't stop smoking. So I'm going to do something else. And they're like, what are you going to do? So I'm going to stop drinking Diet Coke. And they're like, what? Like you drink 6 Diet Cokes a day. You're not going to be able to stop drinking. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stop. So I started drinking water instead of Diet Coke, which is incredibly boring. I'm like, oh, this is not working, right? So then my wife found Mio, which is this flavoring.
Oh,
And so it's
yeah.
a little bottle and you just squirt it in. What? This was the answer, right? So literally, it's been, yeah, like 15 years now since I've had any kind of carbonated Diet Coke, soda, whatever, right? Because now I just drink water or iced tea and I put the Mio in there. And now it's like, this was so much, it actually was better because I was just like 6 different flavors. Diet Coke only has one. Like I have to go to the store and buy Diet Coke. I can just turn on the tap and throw some meat. This was like what? So like we'll go on a long car trip. I told you we're going on a 4,000-mile car trip. She'll drink Diet Coke. It'll be right next to me, and I don't care because it's like I got my mead water. I'm good, right? So there's no feeling of deprivation. So it's easy. So I just go on. So I haven't had it in 15 years. But that's so what I'm saying to people is so when I was doing my heroin patients, I was giving them Suboxone, which then gave them a little bit of benefit, but no side with way less side effects, right? So they didn't have to go to some, neighborhood and meet up with some illegal guy and risk
Yeah.
getting killed and risk
A
getting
little,
fentanyl in
yeah.
there and whatever else and risk getting, AIDS or whatever. And you're like, yeah, so now they can go to the drugstore. They know exactly what they're getting. The government helps pay for it. They just have to come to me once a month. But it's not stress free because they still got to come. They got to hope the pharmacist has it and he's going to fill it and it's not going to give them the stink eye and, all that kind of crap, right? So what I say to them is, look, we're going to have you on Suboxone until we teach you enough stress reduction methods that you won't need that either. And they're like,
Mm.
what? Yeah. So what I say is the concepts are easy. Have less stress, find a different stress reducer, practice till it's automatic, the end, right? You're back to normal. That's not easy, but it's certainly easier than saying, have this diagnosis forever and stay in a rehab for a month and spend
Yeah.
60 grand or whatever, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And to be honest, what was funny is that when you said that you stopped smoking stopped drinking Diet Coke for a while, I was like, then why not say you're an ex Diet Coke drinker? You know what I mean?
Yes,
You
yes.
know, you could use
Yeah,
technically saying use that, but I think it's true. I think this conversation brings people hope, especially for loved ones who are dealing with their loved ones who are addicted. You can make them realize, like, you know what, it's not the addiction that's the problem, it's the stress that's the problem, it's this loop that is constantly a problem, and they don't know how to manage it. Maybe you don't even know how to manage it because you're dealing with other things that are stressing you out. You know what I mean? So it's just like this conversation holds so much value for not just us that are talking, but are the listeners as well, so they can put it in and realize, like, huh, how do I handle my stress? Where do I go to deal with my stress? What are the options that are available for me? You know what I mean? And really
yes,
break it down to make it more realistic so that you don't have to live with the stigma of, oh, I'm an addicted addict
yes,
and this is on me
yes,
forever and I can never get this off of me. Like this is some like mole that's on your shoulder that's just growing and now
yes,
throbbing.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, no. Now this is an opportunity to realize, like, it's just all you got to do is just switch it up. Switch the way you're thinking, switch the way that you're understanding it, switch the way that you're perceiving it, and be more compassionate on yourself and realize I am normal, I am whole, I'm still amazing, I'm still a human being. All I got to do is just tweak certain things and then you'll be okay. And I wish more people can just see addiction in that manner and stop thinking of addiction of like some bums doing math under a bridge by a railroad track or something. You know what I mean? Just the typical
Right,
taboo,
right.
but it's just like, no, it's more than that. So yes, I truly do appreciate this. And time is really catching up to us. But what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking, Gary?
Wow. So in this situation, what I say to people is be willing to recognize that the stress reducer is causing stress because sometimes that's not easy to see. So I had a patient who was a smoker who couldn't get to see her sister who was 6 hours away. I'm like, why not? Just get on a plane. She goes, I can't get on a plane, not smoke for 6 hours. What? I go, do you realize the side effect of your smoking is that you don't get to see your sister? And she's like, oh, I never really thought about it like that. So some alcohol particularly, right? People sometimes don't recognize. They go, oh, they go, your wife is saying, you're drinking too much and it's causing problems. And instead of realizing that the alcohol is causing a problem with their wife, they think my wife is the problem, right? And so sometimes it takes awareness to recognize that you're in a loop. But once you're in the loop, then you go, okay, anything can turn into a loop. But then you're like, wait, this thing that I'm doing to reduce my stress is causing stress. I got to find some other way to deal with it. And that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gary, for this. Oh, I love this conversation so much.
Cool.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you guys enjoyed this conversation too, because how could you not? Please go check out Gary. I have access to his website in the link in the description, as well as go check out the last episode that we just finished recording. Go check it out. Less stress so that you can know how to manage it and don't get on this stress reducer loop, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move differently. Let's do things differently because you know what the old saying says, if you know better, then you should do better. So let's do better, ladies and gentlemen. So, with that being said, bye.